I honestly think.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Side Hustle Experiment Podcast. I'm going to throw it over to Drew to do his very first intro.
Yeah, finally he's letting me talk. John usually says, "Shut up, Andrew. You're not allowed to talk during the beginning," but now he's letting me talk. This is
Baby
this is
steps,
Jake.
baby steps.
No. This is Jake Rader. He signed up for my mentorship program last year, and really we kind of had to cut it short because he runs an accounting firm that's like the biggest, time of the season. He also just hit 20K a month last month on Amazon KDP. We're getting a bunch into that. It's like a real estate guru. Maybe we'll get into that. And then he's drop shipped hundreds of thousands of dollars of adult toys on Amazon, along with many other things, invest in big companies. Kind of a big deal. So hopefully we're going to do a bunch of big stuff. And yeah, how's it going today,
That's right.
Jake?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so first thing, I think the main thing we want to hear about off the bat is this KDP stuff, because I feel like no one's really talked about this in our side of stuff. So kind of break down why you even started with that and how you got into it, especially from coming from, okay, you wanted to learn OA from me. Now you want to do a whole different kind of thing, really.
Yeah, so come 2020, everyone's in lockdown. CPA firms are still considered essential, so we still worked like normal. But I kind of started seeing people have success online, got into drop shipping in 2020. I like to zig where others zag. So I saw everyone getting to private label with dog food, something that was kind of like exciting. I saw the other side of the areas that people didn't touch, which was kind of like that adult side. I thought, okay, maybe there's some money to be made here. There was, but with drop shipping, I did close to $1 million in 2020 with like 4% profit margins. That's the stuff no one ever tells you, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, look how much money I'm making gross. I'm keeping less than 5% of it. And so that was my first foray into kind of the e-com side. KDP came around because I had a client who was a mortgage lender, and she ended up quitting her job because she was an author. And I had never heard of her. I didn't understand how this thing was working. So I asked her, she just was selling books through Amazon, Kindle self-publishing, where you can upload a book, either Kindle or paperback. And when somebody buys it, Amazon will print and ship it to them, and you'll get a percentage of the royalties. So that kind of blew my mind. I started getting into that come late 2021. I was always kind of too much of a perfectionist. I wanted the book to be perfect. I wanted the cover to be perfect. And I started to realize that I was never going to launch if I just waited forever. So in February of 23, I launched all my books basically at once. Started at $200 for the month, then quickly was at $2,000, $4,000, $9,000, and ended the year at $21,000, almost 22, and I'm gonna net 15K. So that's quite the jump in that year. And I promise you, KDP is going to be the Amazon guru BS that gets pushed and peddled pretty hard. And I say that because there's a lot of people like you that are just honest and kind of cut through. And hey, don't look at what other people are doing, because a lot of times they're just faking it. And so seeing those people that really are invested in your success pays dividends. And that is kind of how I started with KDP, is I just saw how other people were having success, and there's not a ton out there. You kind of are going out into the forest with a machete and finding your own path, but it's worked out well, and it's going to work out well for many people in 24.
So did you rate the books yourself, or did you form it out?
So I come out with a super detailed outline, and then I have a few writers that I've found that are like the best of the best. If you go out to Upwork and you pay someone $200 to write a book, you're going to have a bad time. But the difference, right, is that I think my most expensive book, I paid all in, cover, writing, book blurb, formatting, audiobook, maybe 2,600.
Okay.
And I made my money back in less than 2 months.
Wow.
And then that's an asset. It's like digital real estate. is that now when you look up my keywords, I'm there. I have over 100, 200 reviews. Good luck trying to beat me at that. And so to me, it's kind of like getting that beachfront property in California. You might be able to be not on the water, but as I keep growing, it becomes digital real estate that is very hard to compete with once that brand is built.
Yeah, and you run like to get those off the ground, is it a lot of ads type of stuff, or what's the like
Yeah.
traffic source?
So the way that it's going to start is you don't really want to run ads until you have between 20 to 50 reviews. Um, there's some books under my own name that haven't hit that part yet, but it's just because the ones under my name are not going to be huge niches, right? So like if you look up van life passive income, you'll find me. Um, and you might find a few others that have bad reviews. So at 7 reviews, I'll probably be later this month. I'll be closer to 30 to 40 as I start building that funnel out. But I was still selling it and doing somewhat well. Where there's other areas that my focus had to be on to kind of like, break apart in a niche that does print much better than kind of those niche finance topics do.
Yeah.
So how do you get reviews for the books then?
A lot of it is having VAs go through Facebook. You're basically trying to say, hey, I see that you followed this group on Facebook. I have a book written. I'll give it to you for free if you write a review. There's some sites out there that I've had a lot of success with, like Free Booksy and Bargain Booksy. You make your book for free, and I'll get 2, 3, 4,000 downloads in a day. And all I need is just maybe 10 to 20 people to write a review for it to start that ball rolling. And so it's just knowing that type of way to navigate it, because that social proof is it's a must have. If you spend 20,000 in ads and you have no reviews, you will not sell a book. So it's that social proof is the number one most important thing.
And when it comes to that business, we just recorded a podcast yesterday. We were talking about these new businesses we're kind of running. And the big part is like all these hurdles that kind of start. You've been in like all these different things. You know how there's always that part where you're like, either this is not worth it or this is worth it, whatever it is. In the KDP thing, what do you think's the part where people are going to get stuck, or people are going to get frustrated, or people are just going to like literally just quit?
It's the low content. That's going to be your journals, right? It's just a journal cover with lined paper that has so much competition. You really have to kind of get lucky to have success there, and that's where most gurus tell you to go. That's where most people are going to go and quit. Oh man, I just spent 3 days on Canva making a cover, and it didn't sell any, and I just wasted all my time. Where this medium content, that's going to be more like your coloring books, trivia, things like that, where there's a higher barrier to entry, so there's less competition, and therefore you're going to have more success. Now your high content, that's like your 30,000 word, much higher level. That can be nonfiction or fiction. That's going to have even less competition. But if you have a great cover, now you're better than 90%. The content's good. Now you're better than 95, and you have 50 plus reviews. Now you're in the top 1% of KDP, and there's no other online business right now that is that wide open. Where in December, I literally only spent time to look how much money I made. I got on. There's no inventory. There's no quality control. There's nothing. There is how much money did I make? Let me look at it. Okay, maybe I should come up with a new book in the series. Maybe I expand this. Or maybe, hey, there's other software out there where you can find niches that might be ripe. And so I have a long list. And in January, I already have a few writers hired, and we're just hitting the ground running.
I think that's amazing too. And I think it just speaks to a lot about the space in general. And I think, if you think you're going to do anything in 3 days and like have success, like you're already going to fail, because I agree with you. A lot of people see, oh, like you could just buy on Nike.com, and they go to Nike, they buy a hoodie or whatever they're going to buy, the price tanks. They're like, oh, this doesn't work, and it's like, no, like that's what everyone's doing. That's what's out. Like we've always talked about this. I used to have like a live podcast, and Drew would come on, and we used to be like, if you see people talking about it, like that's not the thing to be doing. Like stay very far away from that.
You paused out there for a second.
Oh,
For me.
I was gonna say when you see something and everyone's talking about it, that's kind of like when you should stay away from it, and it's basically over because everyone's just kind of using that to promote their group or their success or
Yeah.
whatever, and that's not what they're doing anymore. When they're talking about
Yeah.
it, they're on to the next thing. They're not doing that same thing for sure.
Yeah. And the biggest thing that I think is the most important thing to take away from this, and it's not like I'm trying to go out there and talk about it because the opportunity is so good. I'm not trying to start a course. I'm not trying, like, I like helping people. So I have helped a few people along the way. But, there's a few private label, big superstar people on Twitter. One is a guy named Molson Hart. He does toys, plushes, everything. He brought something to my attention that I was already having success with the KDP, and I was like, that's why. He said in private label, you have to deal with two giant groups that run Amazon, the Orthodox Jews and the Chinese. And the Chinese have a hard time with copy, right? With branding.
Yep.
And the Orthodox, they have a lot of great relationships with Israel. You can't compete with them on their prices. So where am I now? I'm with great branding, great copy, great niche ideas, and great book writing, which is my strong suit. And I don't need to compete with factories that are going to undercut me. I don't need to compete with relationships that I can't create. So it's taking advantage of what you're good at and seeing like, yeah, there's people that still make good money with private label, but it's so much harder. Well, I still want to be in ecom. Where can I go? And so that's kind of how all of this kind of came to be.
I don't think people are going to understand the importance of what you just said there. I've never heard anyone say that aside from you and one other guy. The other guy does 12 to 15 million dollars a year in OA, and he talks about how Chinese and the Orthodox Jews, that is like how the wholesale and the OA and the private label stuff, a lot of that gets like, yeah, destroyed because they have all the factories and they have all the relationships, and you just literally can't get in that stuff. That's interesting that you say that because I've never heard it before besides one other guy. I didn't know Molson Hart had said that either. But yeah, it makes complete
Yeah.
sense that I'm going to start this business that's way more of kind of a creative journey to where it doesn't really matter who it is. Nobody can get in the way of, what's going on here.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah,
that's a
it's
big point too, because like you're saying you're being creative, you have all these ideas. Like I could be like, oh, I don't know what you sell, but let's say you sell fitness books or whatever. But well, I could write a fitness book. Like I don't know, are you talking about weightlifting? You're talking about run? It's much harder to knock off. I feel like, or you have to buy the book, and then I'm sure there's like protections around if they just basically took your whole book or just changed a little bit of it or whatever. But it almost doesn't seem like it would be worth it to kind of knock off your thing because you're already 10 steps ahead. Like you already have reviews, you already kind of have like what's going on, and they're just trying to like go off your coattails. But if they don't know what they're doing, it's not going to work
yeah.
for them.
And it's tons of respect to the people that are killing it on private label. It's hard work to do it, and the people you're competing with, like I said, they own the space, and it's only getting worse. And so yeah, it's interesting. When Molson brought that up, it kind of clicked. I was like, that's why it made sense. I didn't know that that's why it made sense, but that's why it makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, a ton. Yeah, so I guess where do you see it all going, like with the KDP stuff? Like, do you want to do that? Like, what's the end goal? I guess I know that question's like very hard because that can all shift all the time. But where do you see it kind of going?
Well, I honestly think that I will build this up to be a 1 million plus asset by the end of 24. If you go on Empire Flippers right now, there's two businesses for sale. One does about 4,000 net, and I think it's selling for 150 grand, and it started like a year ago. The second one is a romance niche that is selling for over $700,000, and they net, I believe, 15K. And I think that I'll start hitting those numbers in spring. And so the other thing to remember with these books is the norm is 80% of your royalties come from one book. I'm not the norm. I think if I was to look at my books right now, I might make $300 today, and my top 3 books are going to account for like 35% of my total royalties. So every book I have sells. What I'm bad at is building out websites to turn this book into a bigger brand with blogging and all this other stuff. I know that that's what I'm bad at. So that's kind of what I would like to do, is either partner with somebody who's good at creating these blogging situations, or just hire VAs, because that's how you turn an Amazon book brand into a big brand that is now worth big money.
Yeah.
So I don't. If you don't want to talk about it, so you don't have to. But how many books do you have?
So I have 17.
Wow.
I on Amazon it says 22. A few of them were like coloring books that I was kind of messing around with AI and stuff like that. They don't really do well, because now that's kind of what everybody's gone into. So I just pulled them back because I didn't want to get in trouble with AI or anything along those lines. So I have 17 high content books that are selling now.
Yeah, that is so great. I think people that are listening to this, their mind will be blown if that's even out there. Because I've got my mind's kind of blown that it's like that. But I do understand the high margin business stuff where I've been getting into that, like the info kind of product space. And it is crazy the kind of stuff that you can kind of accomplish there. And the comparison to, the OA or whatever it is, like the low versus the high margin, is just kind of ridiculous. And building an asset, I mean, that's just very, very massive.
Yeah.
So what's your goal behind making the websites, to kind of just generate more awareness and like push people there? Or are you trying to make like a series, like book 1, book 2, book 3, or I don't know.
I think that it's I know that those info type sites can make a lot of money. And so I already have, I think my biggest brand, a pen name, has over 400 followers on Amazon. Now that doesn't do much for me. I don't have their emails. I can't tell them when a new book's launched. They have to log into Amazon and get that alert. So I know what I'm bad at, and that's building this way to get your information and then tell you when new books are launched, ask for reviews. Like, I'm doing very well, and I'm doing 5% what I could be doing if I just nailed all that other stuff. And so having a blog or something along those lines, with fitness or cookbooks or parenting, whatever it is, that's how you turn a reader into someone who's going to read all your books and go to your website and read your blogs. And it's how you turn one customer into 6.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like when like bigger influencers launch a book, they always give away a free chapter, and you get put on the email list, and then they're like, "Hey, the book is out. Can you review it? Can you do this? Can you do that? And we're gonna do a launch party." So yeah, that could be a lot of leverage, especially if
Big
you're in
time.
the same genre. Like, hey, we just released a new book. If you like this one, or everyone who reviews it is gonna get a free copy of the next, or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, one thing, I guess if somebody's watching this and they're like, well, I'm very intrigued by the KDP stuff, what would you recommend as kind of like a blueprint to where to start? Where do you go on YouTube, or do you buy somebody's course, or, what do you kind of do to get started with all this stuff?
Well, I think reaching out to people who do it well. The course stuff, to me, I don't think there's anything out there yet that's amazing. The only reason I say that is because I feel like most courses are new people excited and talking to other new people. And that doesn't do much for that person who spent that money. For one thing, I think it's nice. Spending money means that you're going to now try harder, right? It
Mhm.
just seems to make you try harder when you're actually putting
Yep.
energy and money into it. But that's why I've kind of enjoyed the mentorship thing. I've had 1 or 2 people one person, I've worked with 3 people. The first one was a realtor who just wanted to get a high quality book that he could give out to his clients and establish a name for himself in a local market. And the difference between him working with me and him working with someone else is that I actually have helped him create a book that sells. So a lot of
Yes.
times you just get a free book that sucks, that you give away for free and that goes in the trash. Where this book is something that people actually find on Amazon and buy it. Now he can give it to his clients for free. They'll see that he has over 100 reviews, that it actually sells. It's occasionally a bestseller. That type of thing where now you can say I'm an Amazon bestseller holds a lot of weight to your average customer. The other two are people that wanted to build an asset, and I would say that one of them broke $1,000 in December, and so obviously December's Q4 is a big month for any Amazon seller, but what that has done is helped him build an asset, and that's before he's even launched his first high content book. That's medium content, I'd say, coloring books, but more like infographics specific to people that might be in the medical field or the fitness field. And it's much harder than just creating like a journal, right? So he's had success there. And I would say reaching out to those types of people that aren't going to sell you a course for you to talk to new people. You really want to be getting that hand-holding from people that have done it before, similar to your mentorship program, Drew. I liked working with you. I didn't want to work with a video of you and then ask other new people how it was going.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. That's the last podcast we had. We were talking about that. Like, if you just go find somebody that knows what they're doing, just tell them, hey, can I pay you to teach me this stuff, like one-on-one, not like I'll give you a big video review stuff and then you never talk to me. Yeah, that's just not really, it's not very good for success, I would say. That one-on-one help is just like so big.
The
So when
success
you
rate
started-
has to skyrocket. Yeah.
So when you started, did you have a mentor? Did you just kind of go through videos and try to figure it out, or did you get a course?
I had hired a mentor and did about 4 lessons, calls with him. And so that's kind of how I got some on the ground training. It was in 2021, it was much harder to find somebody who's done it before. But I was able to find somebody and get a lot of good knowledge. And at 2021, I was doing the van life thing. So we were living in a van and traveling all over. And when my girlfriend was driving, I was doing research and finding out book titles and going through all that stuff. And then in 2023, we went on another van life trip, and I had some calls with Drew while we were on the road. And so it was one of those things that when you're doing stuff like that, you have all the time in the world to really do your due diligence and kind of start nailing your craft better.
Yep.
So have you made a book then that kind of, what would make a good book versus a bad book? Have you made a book that didn't sell, or it's more like you could kind of change some things to make it sell, or how does that
Yeah.
go?
So the books that will not sell, you could have the best book in the world and the worst cover. That people judge a book by that cover, and you have to nail it. So getting a $20 Fiverr cover is just not going to cut it. You need to go find a really, really great designer for $200, $300, and it's well worth it. Out of those 17 books, I would say that maybe one of them was a dud. And it was just because looking at that, if I look at the market in that book now, there's only one book that does well. And it may be because he or she's an influencer that I wasn't aware of. Things like that, where, when I'm looking at what book will sell, I want to see a proof of concept from maybe 2 to 4 other books. If I see 12 doing well, can I be better than those 12? And if I only see one doing well, why is it doing well? Is it because the cover? Is it because the title? Or is it because the author is somebody that you might not be aware of, but is a big deal in their niche? But out of the 17, 16 are doing, I made my money back on all of them. The reason that 17th one was a dud is because my ad spend is better spent somewhere else. I might as well use that money on books that give me 3-4 times ROI than one that I might give $1 to get $1.10, right? It's not worth it.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, so I guess we might circle back around this KDP thing. I feel like we can spend the whole time talking about this. I want to get into something else. So
It's
on the
interesting.
accounting side, I'm sure you've done some Amazon guys books. I know I've referred you a few people. If you from the accounting side of Amazon in general, what kind of stuff do you see that that doesn't align with what people say on a lot of these podcasts and on Twitter and that type of thing? Have you learned anything about that from doing books of people?
Yeah, I would say, on Twitter, everybody is making 30%. They're not. It's like, yeah, I mean, maybe, when I was doing my best OA, it was because I had found Yetis and Life Straws. I was
Yeah.
just making money with Yetis and Life Straws, and that was it. Um, I see a lot of people that don't understand the actual return rate on clothing, on socks, shoes. It can be brutal. You might be making good money until you're not because they're all getting returned to you. And then not knowing what to do with those returns to get them mailed back to you, to get them destroyed. There's a lot of things people have no clue what's going on. And then they're going, wait a minute, I'm paying my credit card bill. Um, what I have left over is not nearly what I thought was going to be there. And it's because they really are not paying attention. Um, and so, what I found is best for books is I'm not going to be your CFO. And that means I'm not going to look at each item granularly to tell you buy this, buy this, buy this, sell this, type of thing. What I do is look at the big picture, and it's obvious when you have a massive return rate to figure out why that's happening. But what I found is that most people want an affordable bookkeeping option that they can also talk to somebody who's been there and done that. And that's kind of what we offer and try to give out to clients is generally we're at that 299 range. And if you want your taxes included and consulting and all this stuff, we might be up to the 500 range, but that's all inclusive. That's everything. That's cell phone texting me at 6 in the morning because it's some sale type of thing, right? It's that type of handholding that I've seen people generally want and need rather than their $1,000 bookkeeping and then there's taxes on top when most of that time that seems unnecessary.
Yeah, I found that interesting because from what I have seen so far online, the bookkeeping is very ridiculous for what people charge for that. And like when you really break it down, I mean, there's not like that much to it. It's just a bunch of grunt work, for the most part. And then when you get into the like, tax planning and the strategizing side, that's where the expenses can come in. But the bookkeeping part, really, you can probably outsource all that to someone for $3 an hour or something. It's just that's all it really is.
Yeah, I track your bank accounts and your credit cards,
Yeah.
and when you get paid by Amazon, I can see it. So it's one of those things that if you want to know which credit card to get, I can help you. If you want to know how much money you made last month, I can help you. Your return rates, I can help you. But I just find that a lot of times it can be a lot. And the way that I want to do your bookkeeping is I want to do your bookkeeping to save you on taxes. That's my goal. So, I want it to be a net benefit to where you come to me and you've saved more than you've paid me. Because with bookkeeping, I'm going to take anything reasonable, ordinary, and necessary. Oh, my light went off. Anything reasonable, ordinary, and necessary to how you make your money, I want to write off. So I'm going to track everything and go through all that for you.
Since John, you got anything more on the bookkeeping?
Yeah, so for most people, I would say, so are you working, do you like hook into their inventory labs and all that kind of stuff? Or are you mainly just kind of looking at, I guess, financials?
Financials. So I'm going to give them a cash flow statement, profit and loss, balance sheet. Sometimes people want me to look at their inventory labs. Other times they want me to just base it off of what credit cards do you use to buy, and where do you get paid, and where am I going to see these refunds? Where am I going to see these additional expenses to really get down to what you're actually making?
Yeah, I mean, I work with a bookkeeping service, and then I also have kind of like someone I've always worked with, and he kind of does the tax filing, and he's like my guy that I'll text, be like, what should I do here? I need to close this or do that. And
Yeah.
yeah, having a bookkeeping service, man, it's eye-opening to see like you see your inventory labs number, and I think a lot, I was actually thinking about this at the gym, a lot of people are like, oh, right, like it says like 10,000, you're like, oh, I probably like have like I don't know, $200 worth of software. Like, let's call it 9,000, but that 9,000 quickly shrinks down to like four or five real quick. Like, with just other expenses, hidden expenses. Um, Especially too, I was telling Drew the other day, when you're looking at inventory labs, like let's just say it's, I don't know, October, go back to October in December and it looks totally different. Like as those returns come in or other hidden expenses or things get lost or you don't get reimbursed for stuff, that 20% margin is now like 15 or 10%. And if you do like your year, it's like, oh, it's only 12%. But your month, it looks like you had this great month. And the next month it looks good, but it's not till like 3 months later where that 15% is all of a sudden it's like 8 or 9%. You're like, what happened? And it's all just
Yeah.
returns and for me, for inventory labs too, I've been doing this a long time, and a lot of it's not super clear. Like I haven't really talked to anyone. Like I've interviewed CPAs before, and it's like, well, how does inventory labs handle returns? So it's like, well, on like their help side, this is what it says, but I'm not really sure. Like that's what's It's just all this gray area. And I honestly, I said this on another podcast. It was like, I honestly think if you don't have a CPA or bookkeeping firm, like you have no clue what you're making.
Yeah, it can be eye-opening for a lot of people when they actually see their numbers. And there's bookkeeping services out there. If you have bookkeeping done, you're probably better than most sellers, right? Because it's hard to be an OA expert, an Amazon expert, and an accounting expert. You need help where you need it, and and so if you have something, it's helpful. Now, there's other times where, like I said, it can get excessive. If I give you 1,000 items and I need you to tell me what it is, generally you can figure it out along the way as a bookkeeper, as a CPA type of thing, where I don't need to take up too much of your time. And if I've seen it once and you've answered my question, and if I see it again, I'll know where that goes and why. But yeah, anything like I said that it's always going to be different. You might have a lawyer who wants to make some extra money and is a high earner. You might have someone who's bootstrapping it and just kind of rubbing two pennies together, and suddenly now they've accrued a pretty good living. Each one of those is going to have different tax situations and different reasons as to why they might want to spend more in December than they would in January, right? Where it's one of those things where sometimes it's going to come in handy where how much you're spending and when for each situation, because they're all going to be different.
I have a meeting with my accountant every third quarter, and it's just like, what does this look like? How much do you think I'll have to pay in taxes? And it's
Yeah.
like, what do you think you're going to do in Q4? I meet with him pretty much probably once a quarter, and it's so worth the $200 because he just could help me guide through, hey, like, it's probably a good idea for you to buy a brand new computer if you really want one. Like, this is the time to do it. Like if you think you're gonna crush it, like we'll pay this towards taxes. And just kind of having someone handle that kind of stuff. Or like I just got a bunch of stuff in the mail. I'm just like, well, gonna send it to him and he's gonna kind of sort it out for me instead of trying to like Google around. Because my time is better spent like working on my business or doing other stuff instead of Googling and doing something and then having to call him to fix it. And it's like twice as much because I didn't understand what was going on.
Yeah. And just knowing you're in good hands,
Yeah.
whoever that is, just knowing you're in good hands, that you're getting taken care of and that you're important to that person, and you're not forgotten about and just like one of 20,000 on his list, then it's something that you are like, oh, okay, I'm in good hands. I'm happy. I don't need to rock the boat.
Yeah, I think that's so huge when it comes to like literally any service, and especially when it comes to this tax stuff. For me, like taxes, this whole conversation just gives me anxiety. I hate even talking about taxes. So, literally, it's like the bane of my existence, man. Like 2 nights ago, I was just laying staring at the ceiling, like how much am I gonna have to pay in taxes?
It's
Just thinking
coming.
about all this stuff. Am I gonna get feed for something that I missed somewhere? It's just awful. And I think having somebody that's communicative with you and just giving you a rest assured everything's going to be all right. I've got all this covered. Here's what you need to do here, whatever. It's just really big on your mental like health for all this business stuff. And it's like that everywhere, no matter what the problem you have. You just need to be in communication with people. I think people just, for some reason, I think there's a trend nowadays of you charging a bunch of money for a service and giving the worst service ever. Like a lot of the services I've paid for in the past have been like that. It's just I don't understand.
Yeah.
But
Because you
Yeah,
feel like
it's
stuck
it's
too.
wild.
And I'm knowing from experience, like working with this bookkeeping firm, like the first month sucks. Like I don't know how you do it, but like, it's just a lot. Like, hey, here are all my credit cards. Here's the bank accounts. Like, oh, this password's not working. It's just like, oh, do I want to do this? But now that it's all set up, it's probably the best thing I've ever done, and it's the best. Like everybody always asks, like, oh, when's the best time to get one? It's like as soon as you can. Like I don't know if you don't know your numbers in this business, like you're screwed hard. And I
Yeah,
think a lot of people don't know their numbers. And sometimes it's like, well, if you're making 10 grand a month, give an accountant 400. Like, what's the issue? Like, I don't get it. But
yeah,
maybe you're not, maybe you don't have that 400, and that's a bigger
different
flag to be like, maybe I should get one and figure out why I don't have this $400 for an accountant.
yeah, to me, the accountant, being a CPA is, I envision it to like, you guys are in a boat and you guys are actually moving, right? But is it because your boat works or it's because the current is taking you somewhere until the current stops and then you sink, right? It's one of those things that you have to know how you are navigating. And if you are just kind of winging it and you're like, well, actually, I'm moving forward. Well, you're moving forward because the current's pushing you into a big giant wall that's going to sink your boat. And so it's kind of knowing how to navigate that to put yourself in the best situation where you can make the most money but pay the least amount of taxes. Who doesn't want that? Everybody wants that. So that's always the goal.
Yep. Well, I want to hop into this the drop shipping the adult toys a bit because I think that is such an interesting story, and I'm sure lots of clips will come out of this one as well. So, how
I
did you
bet.
originally get into that one, and then yeah, walk through that a little bit, that specific process, what your day to day looked like when you were what was it OA or was it wholesale? Like what kind of was the whole thing
It was
about it?
just drop shipping.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I did not have any inventory until somebody bought it from me on
Mhm.
Amazon, and then I would order it from the wholesaler. So I used the software I feel like's really dropped off, but it was Inventory Source. I'm sure most people have looked at Inventory Source. So the way that this worked is I was looking at all of the available wholesalers, and at the time, and I think it still is, Inventory Source would let you look at each individual SKU. So I could see what I could buy the SKU from for this item, and I could see what it would sell for on Amazon, and then you just do the calculations. And it's FBM, so you're not shipping it to Amazon. You're just having it directly go from the wholesaler to the customer. And if I could make 1 penny, I would do it. Because then they'll upload all 10,000 plus items, and I know that I'm profitable on every single one. And you just rinse repeat. So on some items, I was making a single penny. Other items, I was making nothing. And the reason why was because I was pushing other people off of the listing, is that they couldn't really compete with me because I was making nothing on it. Eventually they leave, I'm the only one on it, and then I can bump the price up a little bit and have some reward there. So some of that stuff, is a little, it's business. And, and so, they would just add 250 for every shipped item. So I would include that in the cost. And I would have to go through Inventory Source and click the, use best option shipping, have it shipped, and just kind of watch it all roll in. Eventually, I hired a few VAs to list on eBay because eBay was the bane of my existence because it's made in like the 50s and you can't just auto populate, right? It's all basically hand done. Eventually, I got to a point where I was doing very well gross. Net wise, right, I was probably making 40 grand a year, 48, 36, something like that, where it's nice to have it come in. But I started getting trademark stuff where even though I was allowed to sell it through my wholesale supplier and I could give them letters, I was getting all the time 2 a week from different brands. and it just got to be too much of a headache. So I slowed that down. Occasionally, I'll list some stuff on eBay because I'll get email notifications like when the supplier is having a huge sale, and I'll just list it on eBay and make a couple $100 here or there just for the fun of it. But uh, it was a good learning experience for sure, just with business in general. I'd get stuff returned to my house. And I'd have to dispose of that. I'm like, this is some crazy stuff, but it was a good learning experience. And in 2020, I probably could have done better if I had really just taken advantage of listing it for zero, maybe losing 10 cents every time I sold something, then owning the listing and then bumping the price up. But I was learning as I went, and it was still just a good way to add that to the resume, right?
Was it stressful? For me, like when I think about the drop, it just seems like a stressful business and like lots to juggle or lots to manage. Like, do you have issues with people not getting the order, or is that just kind of like TikTok-y kind of
No, I
stuff?
never had that issue. I'd have issues with people wanting it at a certain time and it getting there late.
Uh,
That was an issue that I would have. And then another issue that I would have is that the brand would have like a MAP pricing that I was unaware of. The software didn't force me to have that, so then I'd get in trouble because I was selling items for too cheap. Um, and so it ended up being too much, and I didn't want to get blacklisted from Amazon, and I'm glad I didn't because that would have been pretty gnarly. Uh, but
yeah.
like I said, in the time it was, and I still think there's a lot of money to be made there. If you private label something like that with great branding, you'll do very, very well. It's cheap to make, and people will pay good money for something in that realm. Um, but for me, there's just easier ways to make money, so I'll do that instead. But I still think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would have never. That's something I would never even consider. But you kind of just the way I think about it, it's like that's a where it's just like a taboo type of thing. You never hear anybody talk about it or whatever. But here, yeah,
And
obviously,
that's
it's
why I
a
wanted to get into it.
yeah,
Is
it's a massive.
because everybody kind of avoided it. I'm like, if everyone's avoiding it, I'll do it. Um, and that's the whole thing, zigging where others zag. I like to do the opposite. And if everybody feels like the sure bet in the Super Bowl is side A, I'm gonna mortgage my house on side B and probably walk away happy. Um, because if everybody thinks it's a great idea, it probably isn't.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, that's kind
interesting.
of where I'm looking like this year. I'm like working on something that's I'm not gonna say it's under the radar, but no one that in our space is talking about it. And I've shied away from it so much, and I was just the more I'm like looking into this, I'm like, this like why did I stay away from this? Like this seems like based on my skill set, like you were kind of saying before, I was like, based on my skill set, I think I could absolutely crush this. Just putting together what I already know about Amazon and just kind of marketing and branding. I'm just like, why did I not do this? And I think sometimes you just have to kind of I don't know, be open to other options. I know a lot of people talk about too, it's like, oh, you just gotta focus on one thing and, make that the thing. And I think that's all well and good. But if you don't want it to be the thing and you're just kind of doing it to make money, I think sometimes that's where I got caught with OA. It's like, no, this is the thing. It's like, yeah, it could be one thing. It doesn't have to be the thing. And instead of stressing about like, oh, you just have to grow this. It's like, well, like you could look at something else and do that for like 10 or 20 hours a week. It's not going to kill your Amazon business. And maybe you'll like doing that more. And I think that might be the case with this other business that I'm going to start. Um, yeah, it's just super exciting. And no one's talking about it. I think a lot of people think it's stupid. And the more I'm breaking down the numbers on this stuff and hearing numbers about it, I'm just like, seems like a no-brainer. I mean, I'm still very early into it, but I don't know. To me, it just seems like I'm gonna love doing this.
Yeah, I'm a big systems guy. So people always ask me like, how do you do so much? Like, do you run around with your hair on fire? Well, no. With the real estate stuff, I just found a great team in 3 different states that they're going to manage my property. So I know that they're not going to sell me a lemon because then they need to manage it. I have narrowed down exactly what I'm looking for, the areas I'm looking for, and then they manage it for me, right? So when you look at the real estate stuff, that manages itself. The KDP stuff, I find the niche, I find the book title and everything. I know it's going to sell. I hire the writer. I have the ad agency that does all my ads for me. Now I let that whole system work itself out. With the bookkeeping side, that's more hands-on. You're dealing with people's livelihoods. My day-to-day job is being a CPA. Come tax season, mid-February, March, I will be working 105 hours a week. It's just me and my dad. We do over 2,000 tax returns. We love what we do, and we're both built in this very specific way where this is fun to us. And then we work really, really hard for 4 months. And then after that, I come into the office 5 to 10 hours a week, and I do bookkeeping at home. I do the real estate and the KDP stuff while I travel and enjoy my life. And so building out ways to make money, if you have to do every step of every process, you'll probably have a bad time. But if you build these systems out and you hire people that can replicate that system, then you build out 100 machines and they all just can run themselves while you oversee all of them. And that's what interests me, and that's my video game.
That's been my biggest downfall for sure with like OA, is trying to outsource, not really getting it down that great, just not liking it. And I just feel this other opportunity I have will be much easier to outsource because it's much more straightforward. Online arbitrage, I mean, you've done it. It's not super straightforward if you want to get someone to source for you. Maybe you want them to do admin stuff, but still, it's just a lot of moving parts and pieces. And this other thing, it's pretty straightforward. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm more looking to do that too this year.
So one thing I've had an issue with in the past with the outsourcing type of stuff that you're saying, I feel like it's hard, and I'm sure a lot of people suffer from this, is like the kind of trust factor. How am I going to know that this person's not going to screw me over, not doing good enough a job, whatever it would be? But did you initially kind of encounter that? Were you always kind of trusting of stuff like that? And how'd you kind of get over it if that was the case?
So the way I went over that with some of the writers was I first went to a big agency. The Urban Writers is a big place where a lot of people get books ghostwritten. I found great writers there. If they ended up leaving, I had their contact info, and now I could hire them, right? And they're keeping everything I'm giving them. They're not giving some of it to the agency. So that's how I found those writers. But either US or global, outsourcing is tough. Normally, if it fails, it's your fault. It's because you didn't train them well. You didn't have systems, standard operating procedures. Didn't have something for them to replicate. And it becomes something where if you don't train them, whoever it is, and you give them a task, if you start getting a bunch of questions back, it's because you're unclear with what you're looking to get from them. So normally, it's your fault when global talent or even just outsourced through the United States fails, and learning why you are not good at that and then fixing your problems. It ends up where, people that I've had since 2021, they've never left. It's because I pay them well. I respect their time. And I value them significantly because they're great at what they do. But a lot of that comes into training. And a lot of times I feel like people just let them do with it because you don't want to be a micromanager. But you need to be a micromanager until you can stop being a micromanager. And that's the tough part for most people.
Yeah, I found that extremely tough. That's something that I definitely need to get better at this year as well. Is that whole training better at the beginning? I've had a VA for like 2 years, and I feel like I still haven't even trained her adequately. But still, I've been paying her. I'm just basically running a charity through this woman. But I mean, I just kind of have the. I hate micromanaging because I've noticed myself doing that in the past, and I feel like it's so irritating to other people. But like you said, it's kind of a necessary evil if you want somebody to do a specific task and for them not to, not do a good job, especially when it's that global type of talent. You're paying $3-4 an hour, whatever it is.
Yeah. They want to do a good job and they want to stick around. And so a lot of times it's them panicking. Did I do a good job? Do I need to, you'll get a bunch of questions until it becomes more time advantageous for you to just do it yourself. So it's fixing that problem. And then global talent becomes a huge asset. But you gotta get those skills to be able to reap the rewards.
And I noticed you a few times throughout this, you've kind of down the Upwork or the Fiverr type of thing, and that's where I go to get a bunch of my work. So I find it intriguing. You're like, you need to find higher quality talent, I guess. Where is your recommendation to kind of find higher quality talent, or do you just mean a higher price option on those type of sites, or do you already have networks of that stuff? Like, how do you find that talent?
So I found my best VA um, from a recruiting service called Elevate and Delegate. That's who I use. This guy's kind of bigger on Twitter now, Bryant Swellentrop or something along those lines. He has maybe 6 full-time recruiters. It's a very, very well thought out process. So I've been able to hire really, really amazing talent through him and his group. Now, with the writing and the KDP stuff, that is not something that is going to be well known in the Philippines or Latin America or South Africa, any place where this is a normal global talent comes from. So that I've found from the urban writers. And these writers normally are there because it's consistent work. And then they get a nice sample of work, and then they can go out on their own. Well, when they go out on their own, I want to be there because I'm starting to get into the romance niche. That's where the money really is. And so I'm seeing that what are good authors doing? They're coming out with a book every 2 to 6 weeks. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. So hiring these people and saying, hey, I'm looking to get a book done with you every 2 to 6 weeks. And now I have the cover designers on staff. I have the writer, 1 or 2 writers on staff. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. I'm going to try to figure out book talk. There's a few things there that could be very advantageous. And that's going to be my post-tax season kind of task, is trying to figure out how to nail this romance type fiction. Because the nonfiction stuff, you simply seem to be looking a keyword up, and I'm one of the first results that has a great cover and good reviews. Fiction is a whole other ballgame where a lot of people have tried and failed, and so hopefully I'll try and succeed.
Yeah.
I think one of my biggest takeaways from kind of what you've been saying too, which I really like, and that's kind of what I'm kind of after this year, is you're going after hard things. Like, I feel like a lot of people tend to be like, oh, what's the easiest way to make money? And that might be why they end up failing, because everyone's doing what's easy. That's kind of saturated. You're like, oh man, everyone wants to make a coloring book. I want to make something that's 30, 40,000 words. Like, that seems like a challenge. I don't see many people probably being able to do that or kind of figure out the logistics for that, which I think is really cool and kind of just a big takeaway in general for business. Like, I don't know, the shipping things sounded good, but it almost seems like anyone could do that. You could kind of outsource that. So where does that leave you? Making a penny on a listing, right?
Exactly.
Like, there you go, right? Like, you're making good money on paper, but you know what I mean? There's so much risk there to make a penny a listing. But then when you're like, oh, I'm gonna write a book, it's like, whoa. Like, not many people write books. Like, it's just a whole nother barrier to entry, which I just
Yeah.
find like super intriguing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One other thing I've noticed, I guess you kind of explained this with the systems type of thing, but you have so many things going on at one time. How do you figure out how to delegate your time? And you have a relationship as well. Like, so you have all these different times. Do you have any kind of things are you big like writing stuff down? Do you keep it in your phone? How do you delegate this kind of time?
My notes app on my phone is useful. I know a lot of people use Notion, or they use. I I typically have I'll write something down on a piece of paper, write it on my notes. Occasionally, I will email it to myself. One of those things where it's like I'm emailing like my not my junk email, but my important email that hardly everyone has. I'll email it there so it sticks in my brain. But typically, when you've got a lot going on, you spend more time initially nailing it until it can run itself, and then you can. So if I was trying to start 3 things at once, I'd have a really bad time. But if I was going into something and I was going going to spend a lot of time and energy and focus on it initially, turn around. Now I can focus on something else. This year is also kind of interesting. I hadn't even announced it on Twitter yet, but my girlfriend and I bought into a painting franchise. So we actually bought the whole territory of Las Vegas. We're going to actually own a painting company in Las Vegas that when I've gone through this franchise route, I see people doing $3-4 million in gross and netting down to about 20 to 25%, maybe 18%, depending upon the economies of scale of how many territories there were, employees. And so when I'm thinking about doing a million things at once, you also have to have people that you can really trust. And so luckily, Angie, who's my girlfriend, is going to be the day-to-day operating type partner. And I'm more of the helper, the networker, that type of person who's going to talk to all the realtors and contractors and everything. And she's going to be the day-to-day operating partner. So it's all about doing a lot of things, hard things, and solving problems for people. And if you can do those things, then you'll be rich and happy.
Rich and happy, I love that.
Got to be rich and happy.
So what's your big goal with all of it, I guess? I mean, to me, I don't see that you have. I would say you probably aren't like, I want to hit this set amount of money or I want to accomplish this. You kind of seem like somebody that just does the work all the time, just kind of does it. But I could be off on that. Is there kind of some big thing you want out of it all, or is it just more of just conquering everything in the world, I guess?
Just to make a lot of money. When I don't have anything to do, I'm bored. And so, I just have to, I'm a workaholic. I just like to work. And so being able to work, and you got to have those boundaries set up, and I don't have those set up yet. But when kids come and stuff, you got to have you don't want to be working while your kids learn how to hit a baseball,
Yeah.
You got to be able to do that. And so I think for me, kids are going to come sooner than later. I'm obsessed with setting all the groundwork necessary now so I can enjoy that stuff when it comes. And yeah, if my kid is born in March, I'm not going to be able to go to a lot of birthday parties. I'll be working my ass off. But, 8 months out of the year, I'm able to do whatever I want. Because like I said, the bookkeeping stuff, it's all remote. I'm able to do it from anywhere. And it's laying all those ground rules. And so the service-based stuff, there's a lot of money there. If you can do things and kind of not reinvent the wheel, but make it easier for people to use you, then it's going to be night and day. So that's one thing that I didn't even mean to get into, but when we're talking about tackling a lot of things at once, that's just something that is going to come with the territory. Is I couldn't do it alone. But if you have those people that can do things and you can support them and they can support you, you can do a whole bunch of everything.
How do you know, or how do you evaluate whether or not to take on another project?
The risk reward. I knew that she was an internal auditor for the biggest nightclub in the world, and she was the best at her job. If she left, they couldn't replace her. And I wanted her to make money and keep it in our unit, right? Our family unit. So she's not working hard for somebody else to make them money. She's working hard for us to make us money. And so it was, how can we figure something out that it's going to be in her wheelhouse, and being able to replicate what works all over the country and apply it here. And she can have the training and the support and everything needed, including me, and I can get that same type of support. Then it starts making sense, where if you say, hey, go start a painting company, go start a pest control business, you'll be like, how? But being able to kind of utilize the capital that we had, the connections I have with realtors and contractors, and go, okay, painting's kind of interesting. And finding the right franchisor who, when I'm doing the risk analysis of if this fails, what is really going to happen to me? Oh, not that much. Okay, cool. Then let's go see if we can hit it over the wall.
That makes a ton of sense. I love the thing you're saying about kind of keeping it like in the family type of thing, and not having somebody else work for somebody else. I think that gets a little lost online sometimes. Is don't work with family or don't work with this stuff. But
Mm.
like I don't understand. That seems like the best type of people to work with. If you actually like your family, I mean, these people that work with family and it goes wrong, that sounds like a family problem, not like a business problem. That you're learning a lot about those type of people. So I love that idea because I think you hear quite the opposite a lot of the times. And I see my
Yeah.
life going the same way. My girlfriend, wife, whatever. I want them to probably work for me in some capacity, doing something that they enjoy as well, so we can kind of just be more free on our own time and like love what we do and make the money all together. So I love that.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's awesome too. And I think that's like kind of the thing that blows my mind too is just how much opportunity is out there really. Like let's just say Angie just loved to paint. Well, it's like how could you make money painting? And you go down the rabbit hole for 20, 30 hours or whatever. It's like, oh well, there's these painting franchises, or maybe you buy someone's studio. I feel like sometimes everyone always thinks similar to Amazon, right? Like you don't have to come up with distribution and all this other stuff. Like there's other options for you out there. I mean, look at the
Yeah.
KDP. Like you don't have to have a printing press, right? Like you're coming up with this idea, you're letting, whatever Amazon does with it, letting them do their thing, and you get a way to make money. And then I just think that's the coolest thing ever. And I just never really get it when people are like, oh, I don't like my job, or I don't like this. It's like there's just so much opportunity out there. Yeah, you might not be able to quit your job in 90 days, but like if you start looking and you know, maybe some people be like, "Oh, I have to write a book." It's like, well, you're hiring, right? You're not doing anything, from what I
Yeah.
understand. The writing, the publishing, the printing. It's like, well, that's a possibility for someone who maybe likes to write or has good ideas for books or whatever. But it's just really taking that step and like actually be like, you know what? Let me look into this and see what's out there, or maybe there is something for me out there because there probably is.
Yeah, it's so true. When I was looking at, so they have these FDDs, it's called the Franchise Disclosure Document. So of course I download like 200 of them because I'm like, wow, this is telling me exactly how much these companies make and how big the territories are and how many people are having success. Okay, that sounds great. And so the one I went with is called That One Painter. They're from Austin, Texas. And I called every name in the back and they all were like, "Oh, I love it." I'm like, "Really? Everybody? That's kind of crazy." And then Phoenix was the market that most resembles Las Vegas. They launched in November and did 106,000 in sales in their first month. Do you know how hard it is to start a painting business to do over $100,000 in your first month? That's impossible. That's amazing, and so that's why I started realizing like the power of what that franchising could actually be. Is that if I tried to start a painting business, I would probably lose money in my first month, let alone like sell $106,000 worth of painting services, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that when you start to realize what the business market, what the world looks like, um, there's so much opportunity that if you're not making money, you're probably just looking and focusing on the wrong thing, because it's out there.
Yeah, I almost feel like franchising. I mean, I've not looked into it, but it's almost like the ultimate mentorship because they did all the work, right?
Exactly.
I don't know how many painting places they have, but if they have 100, right, they probably know how to optimize exactly like the area, what kind of stuff you have, like the best colors, and they don't want you to go out of business because it looks bad for them if you go out of business. So they're like,
Exactly.
"Hey, Jake, like, what's going on? Like, how can we help you?" And you're like, "Oh, well, this is my problem." And if you could just follow directions and kind of put the pieces in place, you could have a good business based on what someone
Yeah.
else built.
Yeah, it's hard to be up there on the Google LSA and stuff. And in their first month, if you have a fencing business, you're number 3 in your whole market, just based off of what the franchisor can do for you. So to me, it is the ultimate mentorship. It is the ultimate hand holding to success. And so, it's one of those things that when people make money, right, and they're like, man, this FBA thing or this KDP thing, like this has done very, very well for me. What do I do with this money now? Do I just invest it? Do I put it all in Bitcoin? Like, what am I supposed to do with it? And so it's one of those things that's the real question is, do I go into the service-based business where I feel like I can have a ton of success? Do I just double down on what's been working for me? Do I just invest it and try to go live in Spain for cheap and just like relax and have a good life? There's a million ways to go about it.
Yeah. Well, so what do you that another question then? What do you kind of recommend? Let's say you have I'll give a scenario to make this a little easier. Let's say it's a kid. He's 21 years old or 22 years old. He just got out of college. He's been doing the Amazon FBA or whatever. He's got 80, 100 grand saved up, and he's in a scenario where, do I keep doing this, or whatever it is, he doesn't have to work a job. I was in a somewhat similar situation at this point. So kind of where do you think the money is well put, or what's the what do you recommend for somebody?
Yeah, it's one of those things that reinvesting back into your business is going to give you the biggest ROI. If you invested in the stock market, right, and you're going to get on average 8 to 10% a year, that's still great, but you're young and you can still work and make great money, and taking risks now will not kill you. It's painful if you go put it in crypto and you don't win out and it seems like everyone's getting rich but you, and now it's all gone. But to me, putting it into things, reinvesting back into your business, whether it's a service-based business, right? I'm seeing a lot of people with dumpster rentals, or house cleaning, or whatever it is. If you just reinvest and double down, you can start seeing this exponential growth. And KDP, right? I have turned literally 5,000 into something that I could probably sell now for 400 grand, and I've done it in 10 months. And if I had put that somewhere else, it would have been less risky, but that payout it's not the same.
Yeah, makes sense. Oh, do you have anything further, John?
I don't think so, dude.
This was just a ton of value. I think people are going to be very intrigued by this whole thing, because I think most of the podcasts in this whole space, I don't think there's a lot of people that are as successful as you that do all these different things and all the insights you have. So that's awesome. Is there anything you want to kind of plug? I know you have a Twitter.
Yeah, just I'm building out Twitter. I think I started it in November. So you can find me on Twitter at Jake Rader CPA, RADER. Not like the football team. Yeah, and then I'm taking on more bookkeeping clients and tax clients for the year. If you're interested in KDP, you can reach out to me, and I max will take on like one person a month, and probably nobody for the first quarter just through tax season. But it's something I actually enjoy. And yeah, I mean, real estate wise, just make sure that you work with the right people. If you could just surround yourself with the right people, you'll win. It's sometimes hard to find out who those right people are, but starting with John and Drew is a pretty good place to start.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, yeah. Anything else, John? Close this out.
That's it, guys. Let us know what you think down below. Like, subscribe, leave a review, all that stuff, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Peace.
Peace.